And we're back. Greetings, everyone. This is Lucian Vâlsan, broadcasting from Cluj-Napoca, Transylvania. As always, alongside with me is Herr Jon Gunnarsson, broadcasting from Deutschland, and our producer, James Huff, making sure everything works just fine, broadcasting from the States. Greetings, Jon.
Good evening. It's good to be back, I guess. It's been a while.
It is. Yeah, it's been a while. It's been, 3 weeks? 2 or 3?
Yeah,
I
two and
think
a
3.
half.
2.5. Oh, yeah, because we broadcasted on Monday, yeah. Most of it was my fault because I really thought that I would be exhausted after I cover a huge national convention of a progressive political party, but it turns out that I was. I wasn't particularly able to articulate words after 3 days of swallowing progressivism almost non-stop because during the day I would hear them live, and then during the night I would edit the videos so I would get to hear them again. It wasn't particularly pretty, but yeah. So most of it, most of the fault for the absence is mine, and also because I soon have to go to take off to Sweden. I also have to do a lot more things than usual. So the schedule has just gotten insanely crazy for the end of May, basically, and early June. But other than that, the weather has gotten nicer. Did you have the same luck?
Yeah, if by nice you mean really warm, then it's nicer, but it's actually a bit too warm for my tastes. Like especially at night, it's really annoying to try to get to sleep when it's really warm. But during the day, it's fine. It's quite warm and sunny and so on.
Yeah, it's been raining this week at least. Last week it was fantastic, but this week it has been raining. Today it hasn't, and today was a little bit colder than the previous days. But in the previous days it was warm and was raining from time to time. The raining part was annoying, especially when it was sunny and raining at the same time. That's annoying. Yeah, my grandmother used to say that when that happened, that means the devil is beating his wife. So yeah, but in all seriousness, the warm part, I like it, and I don't know, maybe you were a bit more unlucky than we were here, but during the night it wasn't particularly warm. Just wait for July to complain about that. I mean, in July here it goes as warm as 32 degrees during the night. Now that's annoyingly warm during the night, but for now 20, 17, 18 during the night, that's not nowhere near as bad.
Yep.
All right. Well, despite the long period of absence, we have a moderately long news section, so I guess we'll get the time to babble quite a lot about each element. So let's start.
Yeah, it's also because it's been quite judicious in what the pieces I actually want to include. I could have sent you a couple of other pieces too, but I thought it was quite enough.
Well, I had like 21 of them, including the ones you sent me. And eventually the first 10 were very easy to dismiss. I was like, yeah, not going to waste time with this one.
Yep. Okay, let's get to the first one, which is from the Telegraph. Oxford student who stabbed boyfriend could be spared jail, quote, because of her extraordinary talent. An Oxford University student who stabbed her boyfriend could be spared jail after a judge said she had an extraordinary talent for medicine. Lavinia Woodward, 24, who studied at Christ Church College, Oxford, stabbed her Cambridge-educated boyfriend in the leg on December 30th last year following a row. The pair had a drink and drug-fueled argument, and Woodward punched and swiped at the victim with a bread knife. She then stabbed the man before hurling a laptop, glass, and jam jar at him. Prosecutor Kathy Oliver said Woodward met her ex-boyfriend on Tinder. The pair had a row, and when he threatened to call Woodward's mother, his then-girlfriend punched him before picking up a bread knife and stabbing him in the leg. The victim, believed to be a PhD student at Cambridge University, had begun dating Woodward earlier in the term after they met on dating app Tinder. She admitted a charge of unlawful wounding at Oxford Crown Court, and Judge Ian Pringle said the offence would normally mean a custodial sentence. But he then deferred sentencing for a period of 4 months and hinted that she would not be jailed because of her, quote, extraordinary talent. He said, "It seems to me that this was a complete one-off to prevent this extraordinary able young lady from not following her long-held desire to enter the profession she wishes to would be a sentence which would be too severe. What you did will never, I know, leave you, but it was pretty awful. And normally it would attract a custodial sentence, whether it is immediate or suspended. The court was told her college will allow her to return to in October because she, quote, is that bright, and has had articles published in medical journals. However, she's unlikely to be able to become a surgeon, as her criminal conviction would have to be disclosed, said Jim Sturman, QC, defending. Woodward's name appears in articles published in medical journals, including the Annals of Thoracic Surgery, Hypertension, and the Journal of Physiology. A source said that her ambition had been to cure heart disease, and added that she had come top of her year in the preclinical tests that all Oxford medical students take at the end of the third year. According to a Facebook page, she attended Sir James Henderson British School of Milan, a £16,000 a year international school in the Italian city. She left the school in 2011 and began a degree at Oxford in the same year. She had a, quote, very troubled life and had been abused by another former partner, a defense lawyer told the court. Woodward, who was present in court for the sentencing hearing, is currently believed to be on holiday in Barbados. She is set to return to the university for the next academic year. After the case, Mr. Sturman said that Woodward had been making every effort to get her life back on track and added, she has been seeking a counselor. This is not a soft option. This is the judge giving her a fair chance to prove herself. Woodward will be sentenced on September the 25th. She was given a restraining order and told to stay drug-free and not to reoffend. A spokesman for Christ Church College said, I'm afraid that Christ Church does not comment on the circumstances of individual students.
So, I guess next time I need a professional assassin, I'll better choose someone who is of an extraordinary talent. I mean, just saying. Yeah, no, no, just no. I could be a lot more. As far as I understand, the victim did not die. I would be a lot more open to persuasion if this had been the case in the previous 1,000 similar cases, where judges said, "Oh, come on, we can't just interrupt this individual's schooling or whatever career and whatnot because of a one-off alcohol-fueled argument or whatever." I would have been a lot more open to persuasion in this case if this had been used at least several times before, but I presume that's not the case.
Yeah, but it would be even worse if that sort of story would be to set a precedent, because I mean, basically the argument you could make here for this sort of leniency is that that depriving the medical world of this genius in the making would do more harm than good, and it would be better for society as a whole if this person gets to practice medicine. But and that's sort of from a utilitarian point of view, that's so that sort of makes sense in the short term. But if this sort of thing becomes widespread, and you can expect to get off from various reasonably severe crimes just because you were very talented at something, that would be terrible, because then talented people could just commit crimes with impunity.
As I was saying, I would hire assassins of extraordinary talent.
Yeah. That would just basically throw the whole country into chaos, because people could just go around committing crimes.
Yeah. On the other hand, I mean, non-custodial sentences for stabbing, yeah, that's a bit too lenient. But on the other hand, I can sort of understand in general, not just for people of extraordinary talent, but in general, avoiding being too harsh with certain types of unfortunate actions that result from a one-off argument. I mean, I assimilate this situation to a bar fight, essentially. Sometimes spirits get too hot, too heated, and mm, words are exchanged, and sometimes chairs are exchanged, or bottles of beer, or knives in this case. Um, Putting someone in jail for 10 years for that's a bit too much, if the consequences are not severe. However, no jail time, yeah, that's a bit too lenient.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes these sentences are very excessive. As you said, 10 years for something like that would be completely overblown. But there has to be some sort of punishment. Like, it seems like she's just getting off with a slap on the wrist, and that's just not right.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, pay to the victim the costs of hospitalization and whatnot. Or if the victim was treated using the socialist system of Britain, the NHS, then pay back to the taxpayers. I mean, things like this should definitely be part of the sentencing. And I don't know, if you really, if the judge is so concerned with this, then have her work for free for the NHS for a year or two. There you go. The society
Yeah,
gets her extraordinary talent, and the taxpayers don't get to pay for her stuff.
that would actually be quite a creative punishment that would actually fit the crime.
I should be a judge. I mean, seriously, if this is such a huge issue that, oh my God, we cannot deprive, as you said, we can't deprive society of her extraordinary talent. Okay, there you go. Then work for free for the society with your extraordinary talent for a year or two. That would fit the punishment. I mean, at the end of the day, if the victim isn't severely injured and definitely did not die, then um, harsher sentences would be unreasonable. But something like this could definitely work.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. What else is there to say? It's part of the general pussy pass. I'm pretty sure that if this had been a straight A student that happened to be male and in an argument stabbed his girlfriend, we wouldn't be having this argument at all.
Yeah, definitely.
And we would be having and our audience, well, not our audience in specific, but if someone it was passing by and stumbled upon this podcast, would prepare his or her pitchforks, had that person heard us, that maybe we should be more lenient with someone who just stabbed his girlfriend because he's of an extraordinary talent.
Yeah.
So there's that. So that's why I insist that I'm in general for a bit more leniency to these cases, but not that much leniency. I mean, the judge is grasping at straws there with trying to justify being overly lenient. On the other hand, the QC defending this lady, he just stumbled his client in the foot, saying, anyway, she won't be able to become a surgeon as her criminal conviction would have to be disclosed. So what you're basically telling the judge, don't bother with the leniency.
I mean, she can still have a medical career, just not as a surgeon, apparently.
Yeah, although I'm not convinced. I mean, I don't know the rules in England, but they're having a criminal conviction, even of this sort, when you were 20, by the time you're done with or 24, 25, whatever, she's a PhD student, so she's probably 24, 25. By the time you'll actually apply to become a general surgeon, you'll be 35. I don't know if that's necessarily an impediment, or if it is, it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand if you were a former serial killer, but I'm less convinced that there should be an impediment to becoming a surgeon because you had an assault conviction 10 or 15 years prior to applying to become a surgeon. I just don't think it's an issue.
Yeah, that just seems unreasonable. Like, what does that have to do with the ability to be a good surgeon?
Yeah. No. It's just, if that is indeed an issue and it's a rule somewhere, the rule is stupid.
I mean, I can sort of understand for a job like, say, being a policeman or a judge or something like that, then you don't want anyone with a criminal history. But for a surgeon, I don't really see why that's such a big deal.
Yeah, considering that there are other professions such as data security, for instance, where actually having a criminal record in unlawful breach of a computer system is actually a bonus. I mean, and I'm not joking. The biggest companies, especially those that take their data security seriously, they routinely employ convicted felons in their field. So no, if you're a convicted felon of murder, you don't stand a chance. But if you're a convicted felon in unlawful breach of computer systems or hacking or whatever, yeah, you should probably file your CV with some of these companies because they're very likely to employ you because those are usually the best data security experts.
Yep.
All right.
And staying on the topic of crime, we go to the BBC. Germany cracks Euro-wide burglary gang of 500 members. Munich police say they have broken up a huge burglary clan, which they estimate may have been responsible for a fifth of German break-ins. The criminal gang was compared by police to an octopus with tentacles across Europe, and its members were related by blood or marriage. The investigation began when 3 women were caught trying to break into a property in Munich in January of 2016. It has led to arrests in Croatia and Spain as well as in Germany. Reinhold Bergmann, police commissioner for organized burglary, told reporters that the gang could have dozens of other tentacles operating in other countries such as Belgium, France, and Italy. The 3 young women originally arrested attracted attention for the skill and speed with which they were carrying out their burglary in the Munich area of Lehel. They claimed to be teenagers, but police discovered they had forged identification papers and were linked to a wider gang originating in Croatia. Police went on to arrest another 20 young women in Munich, whom they dubbed worker bees, along with 2 alleged gang middle managers in Western Germany and 2 alleged leaders in Croatia. Another 2 are on the run. Arrests have also been reported in Spain. Mr. Bergmann said the group used young women to carry out the burglaries because they were discreet and less likely to face jail. They were even traded around different parts of the criminal family, which police say has some 500 members and is highly hierarchical. Quote, "They have no choice but to participate," Mr. Bergmann said. It was impossible to estimate the scale of losses sustained by burglary victims, police said, but it was likely to reach millions of euros. Police found alleged gang leaders living in luxury marble-floored villas in Zagreb. Croatian police have seized jewelry, other valuables, and hundreds of thousands of euros in cash and are trying to trace their owners. Oh, the poor women's enslaved by this criminal gang.
So all the male members of this international robbery gang were perfectly willing to participate, whereas all the female members of this gang had no choice but to participate.
Of course.
That makes no sense.
Because you see, only men make decisions.
Absolutely.
Women don't, and they just do what they're told, obviously.
In this case, let's abolish women's suffrage. Oh, wait, we can't take that to the logical conclusion because that's wrong also. Now, in all seriousness, it says here that the members of this band were related by blood or marriage. So it's obvious that there were plenty of men who were also members of this gang. And I think they were absolutely correct. We even speculated about this, if you remember. I don't know, maybe was it 6 months, 8 months ago, something like that, towards the end of last year, when we discussed the case with the German police catching Antifa members who were vandalizing police cars, also in Germany. And then we said that maybe someone in the organized crime could take a hint and use girls more often with these kinds of things because they're very likely to get away with, and even the police have to make excuses for them. Now I don't know. I don't think they actually listened to our show and took the hint because it seems that they've been operating for a lot more than the last 8 months. But nevertheless, I'm not surprised. Yeah. I mean, when you see, criminals, this is something that polite society always gets wrong. Polite society thinks that criminals of any kind are just insane, usually too stupid to make it in life and what. No, actually not. Most criminals, especially heads of criminal gangs, are extremely smart people. So it was only a matter of time until they noticed what we have been noticing on this show for 4 years now, that using young women to commit crime is actually a very winning strategy, including for the foot soldier, the female foot soldier, because not only the foot soldier gets a reward out of the burglary in this case, but also is very likely to not be held accountable for it.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, women are less likely to be suspected, and even in the court, they usually punish a lot less severely. Now, thing is that women generally are more risk averse, so it's probably a lot harder to convince them to become burglars and other criminals.
Yeah, but when you're a transnational burglary criminal network with 500 members, there are still around 200 million women on this continent. It's not really that hard to find 10 that are really good at this. Yeah, it may take a lot more investment in recruiting the personnel for the operation, but once you actually recruited the personnel, as far as this article says, it became very successful.
Yep. Now, I'm going to be curious what will actually happen to this woman. Like the police have realized that they use women because women are punished less severely. They get off more often. Will they actually sort of use this insight, or the judges, the authorities in the legal system, will they actually use this insight and sentence these women as if they were men? I'm curious if that's going to happen. That's something I'm doubtful.
Can I bet that they won't?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so. But I think the operation will go just fine. And because at the end of the day, they say, oh, they arrested 2 middle managers and a few foot soldiers. So in other words, the organization is just fine. They just have to recruit some other people for a short little while until these girls walk away scot-free, as usual, from various judicial systems. I don't know, maybe the ones caught in Croatia stand a chance of actually getting a more serious punishment if they had committed a violent crime in Croatia, because stealing money abroad is not necessarily a crime. I don't know. I don't think so. I'm not very optimistic.
Yep. And as long as that's the case, this sort of strategy will continue to work.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I'm willing to bet already that the competition of this gang is already rubbing their hands at. My God, how the hell didn't we think about this first? We better start applying it from now on. I'm pretty sure this is happening right now because word travels fast, even in the underworld of the criminal world, where people don't spend time doing political analysis, but in the end, these kinds of information do travel.
Yep.
All right. The next one is, I haven't been able to understand it.
The next one is from the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung from Germany. Father allowed to vaccinate daughter against mother's wishes. When parents who have been separated fight over whether their child should be vaccinated, a family court judge may enforce the will of the party in favor, as the Bundesgerichtshof has decided in the ruling published on Tuesday. The decision over vaccination had major importance to the child's life, the opinion reads. In the present case from Thuringia, the parents of a nearly 5-year-old girl couldn't reach agreement. The mother, who has primary custody, is afraid of adverse effects of vaccination and does not trust doctors and Big Pharma. The father wants his daughter to receive all the officially recommended vaccines. The highest civil judges had to decide whether vaccination falls under everyday concerns or whether they are whether they are of major importance. In everyday concerns such as proper nutrition or the time limit for a child's television consumption, the parent who the child lives with gets to decide. Major decisions require unanimity. If the parents can't reach a consensus, the courts decide whose decision is in the best interest of the child. In this case, the Upper State Court of Jena had authorized the father to decide over a total of 9 vaccinations, a decision that has now been upheld. The Bundesgerichtshof accepted the recommendations of the Permanent Council on Vaccination as a medical standard. This means they regard the father as more qualified to make the decision.
This is really a tough one. No matter what we say, we're gonna piss off a lot of people, which is great.
That's why I included this.
Yeah, I love pissing off people.
It would be boring to have a non-controversial episode for once.
Yeah, no. Strictly on the medical stuff, yeah, you probably should vaccinate your child. Now, whether the courts have the absolute right to impose this or not, now that's a separate conversation. I mean, is the mother retarded for her opposition? Of course. But should the courts get to impose this? I don't know. Maybe.
That is an important question to ask, and not an easy question, but it's not actually the question that this case poses here. They're not allowed to impose arbitrarily that you're going to get vaccinated. They're authorized to basically adjudicate a dispute between the father and the mother.
Yeah, in which case
if the father were also against the vaccination, then the court couldn't do anything.
Yeah, but still, they sided with the pro side. I mean, I have to say that it is in the best interest of the child, and I can't really disagree with the outcome of the case. But on a moral level, I'm not convinced that these kinds of intrusions are necessarily okay. Because here's the thing. Vaccination in general is definitely good. I mean, questioning that on a general, as in, especially these kinds of people, it says here, oh, the mother doesn't trust doctors and big pharma. Whenever I hear someone using big pharma, non-ironically, I usually shut down the rest of the argument. I'm like, there's nothing to talk about. I mean, if you believe in a big pharma conspiracy, the problem is with you, not with with whatever big pharmaceutical companies, whatever mistakes the big pharmaceutical companies have committed. Because if there had been a big pharma conspiracy, then we wouldn't have doubled our life expectancy in the last 100 years, period. Now, with that said, there is something to be said about certain vaccines, which are usually not included in the official recommended list, which I understand that this was the only point of contention here. Should the kid get the official recommended list or not? For instance, the flu vaccine. I'm very skeptical about that particular one, the flu shot, or the flu shot, I think is the name in English.
Yeah.
I've never taken that one. None of them.
Yeah, me neither.
And I'm actually a lot healthier than the general population in that department. So there is something to be said about certain vaccines to be skeptical of. But being skeptical of the polio vaccine, yeah, that's retarded.
Yeah, I mean, with the flu, you just have to get the new vaccination like every year, and like it just protects you from the flu, which is like not that dangerous unless you have like some sort of pre-existing serious condition, or you're like really weak because of some other disease, or because you're really old or something like that, or you're like a very small child. Other than that, a flu is like annoying and somewhat debilitating for like a week or two, but it's not really dangerous to your life or anything like that.
Yeah. No, but I haven't taken even the one. If you remember, there was the one of the big mistakes that the World Health Organization has committed, and these kinds of things have been piling up lately. I mean, the World Health Organization has gotten progressively worse on certain things, such as declaring a world pandemia on the, what was that called? I think the international name was H1N1 virus, which was a form of flu. Yeah, they declared pandemic on that one, which they shouldn't have, because 100 fatalities worldwide and 5,000 confirmed cases worldwide. Yeah, that's not pandemia. Sorry, it's just not. by their own definition. And I haven't taken the vaccine against that one either. And I actually got in contact um, with the person confirmed to have had that, two days later that person was a confirmed case, and nothing happened. And it wasn't just me. I mean, I interacted with hundreds of people. I was living in a student dorm at that time. I interacted with hundreds of people during the next several days, and no one else got sick. So maybe, just maybe, not all vaccines are perfect. That's why I don't like these quote-unquote defender of science types who say, oh yeah, there is this paper that says you have to take this vaccine, therefore you will. If you don't, you're a bigot, you're an idiot, yeah, no. So there is something to be said about that skepticism. Now, with this particular case, it's very weird, because I'm of somewhat of divided mind, because I would rather have this kind of things be decided. I mean, let the parents argue against each other even for another year, if that's what you have to do, rather than impose it. But I guess you can't do that, because in doing that, you would have, as a court, to acknowledge that maybe there is a case for shared custody, and I guess we can't have that.
Yeah, it's like as far as this particular case goes, I'm perfectly happy with how it turned out.
No, so am
I. Yeah. But the general principle is somewhat worrying, because I don't really like this sort of idea that the court can just intervene basically whenever they want, as long as it's in what they perceive as the best interest of the child. That's a very dangerous principle. And on the other hand, if both parents have the sort of veto power, then we have to have a decision made in some way. Like, you have to have some sort of tiebreaker, and I don't know. It's difficult.
It is, but I would just allow them to argue with each other for another several years if that's necessary. I mean, it's not like the public health of the general population was endangered because just this particular one kid didn't get vaccinated in time. Yeah, I'm not buying that. And it also wasn't an immediate situation that needed an immediate decision. I mean, like, let's say, for instance, now this is an extreme example. I hope I don't get to see this one played out in real life. But let's just say one parent is, let's say, Jehovah's Witness, and the other parent is a normal human being. And the kid gets into an accident and needs a transfusion. And the Jehovah's Witness parent objects to that. And if a decision in favor of the transfusion isn't made in, let's say, 24 hours, the kid dies. Now, that's an immediate situation where I'm sort of agreeing that some sort of authority should come in and say, and tell to the parent that is in opposition to this to fuck off, because that would be an immediate situation that requires immediate attention, and you don't have the time for debate. But in this particular case, there was the time for debate. There was all the time in the world. It wasn't a situation somewhere on the edge where something really bad would have happened if a decision wasn't made within, let's say, a month or two or something. It wasn't. It just wasn't an emergency.
Yeah, I mean, as long as that there's only like a few people who are not vaccinated for these kinds of dangerous diseases like polio and measles, etc., it's not actually that bad. As long as the vast majority of the population is vaccinated, that's more or less good enough, because you have this sort of herd immunity where these diseases it's basically impossible for them to spread because almost everyone is vaccinated.
Yeah, although again, even with measles, I'm a bit more skeptical because, look, for instance, I was never vaccinated against measles because the vaccine didn't exist at the time. And no one that I know that is my age has been vaccinated against measles. And for some reason, my generation is almost entirely alive. I mean, measles is definitely overplayed. I'm not considering that one a very dangerous disease. I just don't. I'm very skeptical against of the vaccine against measles because I don't think it's a serious disease. It's basically like a prolonged flu.
All right. I mean, measles was just an example. Let's take some other
Yeah,
dangerous diseases.
polio, for instance. Yeah, polio, for instance. Now that's real shit, and yeah, you should probably get the vaccine against polio because death from polio is not something nice. It's just not. It's not just
Yep.
that it's death, but it's a very painful death. All right, but yeah, the general principle here is not that doesn't spell good for the future. Yeah, the court will come in and yeah, I don't know, maybe not, probably not, definitely not something to be looking forward to. All right, let's go to the next three are from the Scandinavian world, our friends in Scandinavia. First of them from the British Brainwash Corporation, Julian Assange, Sweden drops the rape investigation. And I'm like, hallelujah. Sweden has decided to drop the rape investigation into WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Top prosecutor Marianne Ny said his arrest warrant was being revoked as it was impossible to serve him notice. Mr. Assange, 45, has lived in the Ecuadorian embassy in London since 2012. He fears extradition to Sweden would lead to extradition to the United States, where he is wanted over leaks. Ecuador has called on the United Kingdom to allow him safe passage out of the country. However, police in London say they would still be obliged to arrest him if he left. The Metropolitan Police Service said Mr. Assange still faced the lesser charge of failing to surrender to a court, an offense punishable by up to a year in prison or a fine. But the UK has not commented on whether it has received an extradition request from the United States where Mr. Assange could face trial over the leaking of hundreds of thousands of secret US military and diplomatic documents. Mr. Assange's Swedish lawyer, Per Samuelsson, said the prosecutor's decision on Friday represented a total victory for his client. But the WikiLeaks founder responded angrily in a tweet, "Detained for 7 years without charge while my children grew up and my name was slandered. I do not forgive or forget," close quote. The plaintiff in the rape case was, quote-unquote, shocked by the decision, her lawyer said, and maintained her accusation against Mr. Assange, Agence France-Presse reported. The decision coincided with the release by WikiLeaks of another tranche of documents about the CIA's technical capabilities. At a press briefing on Friday, Ms. Ny said by remaining in the embassy in London, Mr. Assange had evaded the exercise of the European arrest warrant that would have seen him extradited to Sweden. She said that under Swedish law, a criminal investigation needed to be conducted as quickly as possible. Sweden did not expect Ecuador's cooperation in formally notifying Mr. Assange of the allegations against him, a necessary step in proceeding with the case, she added. But she said, quote, "If you were to return to Sweden before the statute of limitation on this case expires in August 2020, the preliminary investigation could be resumed," close quote. She said it was regrettable we have not been able to carry out the investigation, and added that, quote, "We are not making any pronouncement about guilt." A source at the Ecuadorian Foreign Ministry told the Press Association that Ecuador had fully cooperated with the Swedish justice system, and the source criticized the Swedish prosecutor for unnecessary delays in the case but welcomed the latest decision. The source also added, Ecuador will now be intensifying its diplomatic efforts with the United Kingdom so that Julian Assange can gain safe passage in order to enjoy his asylum in Ecuador. The rape allegation followed the WikiLeaks conference in Stockholm in 2010. Mr. Assange always denied the allegations against him, saying sex was consensual. He also said the case was politically motivated as it followed massive WikiLeaks dumps of secret US military reports that year. Later that year, he was arrested in London after Sweden issued an international arrest warrant against him. Then in June 2012, after exhausting legal avenues to prevent his extradition, Mr. Assange sought refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy, where he remains to this day. After the news was announced on Friday, WikiLeaks tweeted that the focus now moves to the United Kingdom, but Mr. Assange's fate still seems unclear. The Metropolitan Police Service issued a statement saying that its actions had been based on a response to a European arrest warrant for an extremely serious offense. It went on, quote, "Now that the situation has changed and the Swedish authorities have discontinued their investigation into the matter, Mr. Assange remains wanted for a much less serious offense. The MPS will provide a level of resourcing which is proportionate to that offense." The MPS said it would not comment further on the operational plan. Last month, Mr. Samuelsson filed a new motion calling for his client's arrest warrant to be lifted. He cited a comment by new U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions that the arrest of Mr. Assange would be a priority. Mr. Samuelsson told the Agence France Presse, quote, "This implies that we can now demonstrate that the U.S. has a will to take action, and this is why we ask for the arrest warrant to be cancelled." So, this is sort of a follow-up of the fact that I don't know if you remember the piece of news where what's that former porn actress porn actress's name, Pamela Anderson. Yeah, she now has fully committed herself to the cause of fighting for the rights of those falsely accused, which is interesting, I guess. She also decided that because of this particular case, apparently she's a lover of Assange or whatever, but nevertheless, she started using her public image, public persona for this particular issue, which is good. I mean, whatever you think about Mr. Assange, and I think he's guilty of certain things, but definitely not of rape. I mean, the case against him of rape formulated by the Swedish DA is just ludicrous. It is. I mean, I don't know if you remember it's been over 5 years now, but when they formulated the charges, were like, oh yeah, he was into a menage a trois with two other girls, and at some moment, one of them changed her mind 3 days after the menage a trois and remembered that she didn't tell him that she wanted the condom, and as a result, he didn't use it, and now he's raped because potato. That's basically how the case sounded like. I mean,
yeah, it's basically Swedish rape.
Yeah, it's basically Swedish rape. Yes, that's why there is only one plaintiff in the case and not two, because the other partner from the menage a trois looked at this particular lady and said, "You're bloody insane. No, I'm not. I don't want to have anything to do with this." So, you know, Assange has many sins, but he doesn't have this one. I mean, the allegation against him of rape is just absolute lunacy. Now, of course, there are those who live their lives in conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory and say, "Oh, the case was just manufactured so they can have an excuse to extradite him to the United States." Maybe, but unlikely, because this is still Sweden. I mean, a lot less famous people have gotten themselves in trouble for under the exact same type of quote unquote crime. It's just Sweden. I mean, I really don't think that there was someone from the NSA or from the CIA or from the FRA, which is the Swedish CIA, who went to the DA and said, "Oh, you got to charge this person. I don't know, make up some rape or something, because we need to deport him to the United States." I don't think that was the case. I think it was just yet another feminist DA trying to advance his or her career, probably her, because we're not allowed to have white men as prosecutors in Sweden, trying to advance her career and use the already existent laws in Sweden, which are per se insane.
Yeah, but I do think there would be a very serious danger of him being extradited to the US if he goes to Sweden and is arrested there.
Yeah. Again, I'm not a fan of Assange, but as far as the rape charges go, I am a fan of Assange in the sense that, yeah, no, that's just bollocks. Try to charge him with something that he actually did. And stop making up rape stories, please. Can we stop having manufactured rape stories? I still don't understand this particular stubbornness of the MPS, the Metropolitan Police Service in London. I mean, in most places, if you are wanted for not showing up at a court term, but then the particular case that existed in that particular court term disappears, as it is the case now, because the main prosecutor of Sweden basically withdrew the charges or dropped the charges. Then why still enforce the initial warrant? I don't understand that. I mean, in most places, if such thing happens, the police service says, oh, okay, fair enough, move on, and they just move on, and they don't waste their time. I mean, this is basically a stubbornness based on technicality on the part of the Metropolitan Police Service.
Yeah, and with matters as they are now, it's basically nothing has changed for Assange.
Yeah,
he's still basically confined to the embassy in London and can't move out of there.
Yeah, although I presume it's probably easier now to lobby for for allowing him basically safe passage out of the country, you know, I don't know, Ecuadorian diplomatic car and with an Ecuadorian diplomatic passport or something like that. Because, you know, Europe, because the quote-unquote crime he's wanted for now is some sort of contempt of court, I guess, which is punishable by a fine. So basically his lawyer now can say, look, we'll pay a fine, just leave us the fuck alone. Deal with it. Until now, they could always, the British courts could always argue, oh, hold on a second, this is a wanted criminal for rape. We can't just allow him to just go. But now that argument has gotten a lot harder to make in the British court. So in that regard, it is a step forward. Again, I'm not a fan of Assange, but come on, the guy didn't rape anyone. Give me a fucking break.
Yep.
All right, let's go to the next one. The next one is bad. It's really bad. From Sydsvenskan. Scania County Council wants to continue to subsidize the circumcision of small boys. But the proposal for the health board on Friday is facing strong political resistance. This may mean that the parents will instead pay the full cost of 7,000 kroner, that would be 720 euros, starting from next year. The Skåne or Scania region today has an agreement with the private company Capio to carry out 400 circumcisions on non-medical basis per year. The agreement costs the taxpayer 3.3 million svenska kronor, that would be 340,000 euros, and expires in November. The queues are long. The proposal from the regional management is to make a new deal on circumcision extending over 5 years. The patient fee from 2018 would double at the same time from 1,800 kronor to 3,700 kronor, which means half of the cost would be subsidized. But the proposal can be voted down. The alliance parties, that would be the Red-Green Alliance, believe that region Scania will should offer circumcision but not subsidize the cost. We are for a procurement in order to ensure quality assurance, but we want to see a model which is self-financing, says Gilbert Tribo, group leader for the Liberal Party. The alliance carries out a joint proposal, but the Liberals have looked at Stockholm County Council, which cooperates with the private clinic. There, circumcision with local anesthesia for boys up to 3 months costs 3,000 kroners, and with general anesthesia for boys from 2 years of age onwards costs 6,000 kroners. There's an age gap where circumcision is not carried out, but it is because it is risky with general anesthesia for children under 2 years, says Tribo. Sverigedemokraterna, however, does not believe that circumcision for cultural or religious reasons should at all be offered in public care. But the party has previously voted for the proposal, which was perceived as being the least bad. In that case, would be the alliance's proposal to abolish the subsidies. The Scania region has offered circumcision on non-medical grounds since 2009. The argument is that you want to offer a safe alternative to untrained kitchen table surgeons that are at risk, that present a risk of harm to children. Today, Scania is one of the very few counties that subsidize circumcision. For example, in Gävleborg and Blekinge, relatives pay about 7,000 kronor to circumcise little boys. In Uppsala, Göteborg, and at least 9 other counties, the public health service does not carry out circumcisions at all. The Regional Council of Ethics, the Swedish Medical Association, and several other agencies consider that circumcision should not be carried out at all until the individual is old enough to make the decision himself. So, basic economics, if you subsidize something, you'll get more of that something. Is it really that hard to grasp?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone is disputing that in this case, and they're just, it's just, I guess, the idea that it's a medical procedure somehow, and therefore it should be subsidized because healthcare is a privilege, not a right, or something.
Yeah, although they do say that it is for non-religious, for non-medical purposes, so for religious and whatever cultural reasons, which I think is just insane.
So basically, you're saying you want Jews and Muslims to have to pay for their religion?
Yeah.
You monster. Anti-Semitic.
Actually, let me be even more of a bigot. I say that Jews and Muslims should cut the crap out with the whole mutilation business, and should stop committing it. Period. I mean, I don't think my culture and my religion is good enough reason to allow mutilation of infants to be legal. Because if that is okay, then I'll henceforth say that it is part of my culture to helicopter leftists. And I would like the state to subsidize my helicopters, please. And provide me with some leftists to helicopter, at least 2 per week, please. Because otherwise my God will be upset. If I haven't, if we
what
has
if you
got.
afford to afford a helicopter? What are you supposed to do then? I mean,
Sorry.
What if you're too poor to afford a helicopter? What are you supposed to do
Why
then?
I said this. That's why I said the state should subsidize my helicopter. Yes,
Obviously.
of course. It's part of my culture, and
fair.
God would be very very upset if a week has gotten by and I haven't helicoptered to at least 2 leftists. It's part of my Bible, which I'm writing right now, but it will be out in print for the state authorities by the time this becomes a serious proposal. But as much as I like to helicopter leftists, in all seriousness, subsidizing circumcision just sounds like it comes to me as absurd. It just is. It is absurd. I mean, it's bad enough that you allow it legally to happen, which shouldn't be happening either. But to subsidize it? Come on, really? And again, this seems to be a problem with some local single-issue fanatics and ideologues, because even as this article says, most of the counties in Sweden have gotten around to the idea that no, you probably shouldn't be subsidizing the mutilation of children. Yeah, it may be politically incorrect to ban it outright for now, but at the very least, the taxpayer shouldn't be forced to subsidize it. And most counties in Sweden have gotten around to that.
Yeah, and just the important point to make here is that not all cultural or religious practices are equal. Some of them are very good. Others are sort of neutral. That there's nothing particularly good or bad about them, and others are just very harmful. And circumcision is one of those. And just because it's a cultural practice doesn't mean you should continue. We should allow it to continue to exist. If it seriously harms people as circumcision does, then no, it shouldn't be allowed to exist. I mean, we also don't.
Sorry, go ahead.
We also don't allow people to practice, I don't know, human sacrifice, for example. There's lots of ancient cultures and religions that demand ritual human sacrifice, but we still wouldn't allow that.
Yeah, sadly we don't, although sometimes I mean, I'm just saying, if I get to pick who would be the sacrificed ones, yeah, I don't know. In all seriousness, it should be noted that the largest city in the Scania county, or Skåne in Swedish, is the People's Republic of Malmö. The People's Republic of Malmö is my way of saying that it is a very, very far left place, and also a very, very, very Islamized place. I mean, when I want to be really mean, I say that Malmö is the Islamabad of the West, because it kind of is. It is a place that has been literally taken over by Muslim immigrants. That's what it is, and it's. In this particular case, banning circumcision would probably not affect Jews at all, because there are no more Jews in Malmö, because they've all been thrown away by the Muslims there. almost all of the Jews in Malmö have moved away, either to Israel or to other parts of Sweden or outside of Sweden, most of them outside of Sweden, but not to Israel. uh, because the place is very, very Islamized. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, this particular article doesn't say, and I've been a lazy bastard and I didn't look up for it, but I'm pretty sure that most of the pro members of the thing are politicians that are probably named Ahmed and Fatima and something like that, and a lot less. Of Swedish names. Now I have to say that I think this is the reason why this keeps on happening, because it is a significant Muslim population in the county and a Muslim majority in the city of Malmö. Now, with that said, there is another point to be made, and this is probably a more important point to be made for the MRAs in Sweden who will want to argue against this, is the budgetary point. I mean, you can say, look, it's nothing to do with the Muslims or Jews or whatever, but the city is bankrupt, and it kind of is. Malmö is in very, very poor shape from a budgetary perspective. Uh, they basically cannot go from one year to another without subsidies from Stockholm, which is very rare. Most of the counties in Sweden are having their finances in order, but not Malmö. Malmö basically lives off subsidies from the national government. So 3.3 million kronor is a big enough amount to make the case that, look, it's a budgetary constraint. And
Yeah.
the reason I'm saying this is because this is what's been happening in Norway, and we'll speak about Norway in a minute. But this is what has been done in Norway: slow incremental activism to get it defunded, slow incremental activism to convince doctors not to do it, and then start with the proposal to ban it outright. So getting all the counties out of the subsidies scheme would be a very, very important step towards eventually banning circumcision entirely.
Yeah, and where the sort of moral argument, the philosophical argument against circumcision doesn't work, you can substitute this very pragmatic argument that at least it shouldn't be subsidized. Just for on purely fiscal terms, you can argue this case, and you have to bring in Islam or Judaism or anything like that. It's just not something that should be subsidized. There's just no good argument for that.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, again, Scandinavians who listen to us, whenever you are accused of anti-Semitism or Islamophobia or whatever, when you say that baby boys have an inherent right to bodily integrity and not have their dicks butchered by doctors because potato, remind them of the community of Danish Jews. The Jews in Denmark have renounced circumcision on their own accord decades ago and replaced it with some other ritual that doesn't involve mutilating the body parts of infants. So use that particular one as an example too. And I would even go as far as to say that if there is someone who is listening to us and is a Jew, should try to get in contact with some of the anti-circumcision organization in Israel, who are very filled with theological arguments against circumcision using the Torah, because sooner or later this will have to be tackled within these religious communities and using their own literature to argue this case. And it can be done. It's already showing results in Israel, of all places. So if it can work in Israel, it can definitely work with Jews in Norway or in Sweden. And yeah, just has to be pushed harder.
Yeah, I don't pretend to understand any of the finer theological points, but there are lots of sort of apparent commandments in the Torah that Jews have found creative ways around. Like, for example, there's this one sort of a famous commandment about disobedient sons. That if your son is disobedient and disobeys his mother and his father, then they should grab him and drag him in front of the people of the community, and then tell them that our son has been disobedient, and then the community should stone them to death. And so even in ancient times, Jews found that to be rather barbaric. So they got creative arguments against that. So they said, it says, the father and the mother. So if it's if either of the parents are dead or not present at the moment, or either of them disagrees that the son has been disobedient, then it can't be carried out. It says specifically son, so it can't be carried out against a daughter. It says something like about a child. There's specific age limitations on that. And they have to grab the son, so they can't be lame, and they have to speak to the community, so they can't be deaf, and etc. etc. There are more and more sort of stipulations until there's basically no cases at all where this applies. And this sort of rules lawyering has been done with lots of commandments in the Torah that are sort of inconvenient and I thought to be too harsh. And presumably something similar can be done with circumcision too.
Again, it has been done already. The largest community outside Israel is the community of Danish Jews, who have used. Apparently there are at least 3 different rituals to mark the entrance into the Jewry, and one of them is circumcision. But apparently there are 2 others, and the 2 others are less practiced, but they are basically ceremonial and they don't involve the mutilation of anyone. And the Danish Jews have started using one of the other 2, and it seems to be working. So if it worked there, we just have to ask them what the hell did they do and how did they argue it, and start persuading other people to do the same.
Mm-hmm.
As for, it will be a lot harder with Muslims though, because and this is, again, not all religions are created equal. Some of them are outright cancer, and this is the case with Islam, because with Muslims there is exactly one Islamic sect that doesn't allow circumcision, and the problem with that particular sect is that no other Muslims acknowledge that sect to be Muslims. So that's about the sect I'm talking about is called the Quranists. Most of them live, I think, in Thailand. I wrote about that a few years ago. But anyway, it's a very minuscule subsect of Islam, and I doubt that their particular argument will be persuasive with the wider Muslim world anytime soon. So it's gonna be a lot harder with Islam. So at some point in time, we're just gonna have to tell to the Muslims, tough luck, tough shit. No, you're not allowed to mutilate your kid. Beat it. And I'm very for that option. Is it authoritarian? Yes. Do I care? No.
Yeah, I mean, it is authoritarian, but it's also, I guess, authoritarian to prevent people from, say, committing theft or murder. But it's still a good idea.
Yeah. I just don't think, and again, I apply this generally. I don't think that someone's religion should be allowed to go as far. I mean, I'm already a lot more tolerant when it comes to religious rights. For instance, I think that you should be allowed to refuse one of your customers because you despise that customer because of your religion. I think religious rights should go a lot further than they are allowed to go now in Europe. But I don't think religious rights should be should go as far as to allow individuals to mutilate their children. I just don't think that's fair.
Yeah, I'm not on board with religious rights. I think people should not get any sort of special rights because of their religion. As for refusing customers, I think people should be able to do that for arbitrary reasons.
For any reason, yeah.
They should just be allowed to not allow you as a customer because I don't like your face, or because you're born on a Wednesday, whatever.
Yeah, of course, for any reason. But when there are cases like this, oh my God, he refused to I don't know, to photograph at a gay wedding because his God doesn't allow it. I'm like, yeah, I'm for that person's right to do that. Not because I agree necessarily with his or her religion, but as you said, in general, I agree with refusing any customer for any reason. And I think any reason is legitimate. It's my business. I get to choose when I work. If I don't want to work with you, then I won't work with you. Tough.
because it's just
Because you were
I'm
born on
against
Wednesday.
because just I'm against slavery, and
Yeah.
if you force someone to work for you, you make him at least for a short time partially a slave, and I'm
Yeah.
against that.
Yeah, or an indentured servant, which is technically different from slavery, but not that different. But yeah, it's always interesting to see, and just as we'll see in the next article, uh, basically the only ones having the normal position in Sweden are the Sverige Demokraterna. Now, if you are to read the cathedral media, you will get to see the argument that Sverige Demokraterna are the Nazis and are they extremists and whatnot. When on almost any cultural issue, they're not even socially conservative. They're like, yeah, maybe we should get the state out of it. Yeah, maybe we shouldn't subsidize your whims. Yeah, maybe individuals should negotiate that amongst themselves, uh, and things like that. I mean, it's always remarkable how twisted the media landscape is when the reasonable position are from the individuals that we're supposed to hate.
Yeah, I mean the Sweden Democrats, they're basically far right on the Swedish political spectrum, which means not particularly far right at all.
Yeah, the Swedish political spectrum is very diverse. It includes everything between Lenin and Stalin. Um, and then there's Sweden Democrats who are a little bit to the right of Lenin, and they're being called Nazis for that. But yeah, speaking of extremists with serious positions, the next one is from Norway, but because I'm a lazy motherfucker and I don't want to translate from Norwegian, we're going to read from the Independent. Norwegian ruling party votes to ban circumcision for men under 16 years old. Anti-immigrant party is third largest in country and works in coalition with Norwegian government. Actually, it's second, but then again, most of this article has a lot of fake news in it. Anyway, a political party in Norway has voted to ban the ritual circumcision of boys under the age of 16 and several other measures which have been blasted as an attack on minorities. In its national annual conference over the weekend, the anti-immigrant and libertarian Progress Party voted to also ban hijabs in public schools, as well as forbidding the religious ritual of circumcision for young men. Advocates claim that circumcision resulted in mental and physical harm to children and was a serious violation of human rights. Norwegian Prime Minister Erna Solberg heads a coalition between the Conservatives and the Progress Party, which is the third largest party in the country with 29 of the 169 seats in parliament. The party leader, Siv Jensen, told the Aftenposten newspaper that she was against forbidding circumcision. The reportedly last-minute and chaotic voting schedule meant that the proposed compromise banning state funding for circumcision failed. Ms. Jensen insisted the move was not designed to target minorities and that her party had consistently defended Israel. I don't care. The vote in Norway comes a day after Belgium's parliament in Wallonia voted in favor of banning ritual slaughter, which would affect Jewish kosher and Muslim halal rituals. It comes into effect in September 2019. I don't care. This is very sad, Ervin Kohn, a Jewish community leader in Norway, told Aftenposten. That will be the Progressive Party, must know they won't get a majority for this in Parliament. Yes, they will. It seems like they want to send a signal that we are unwelcome in the country. No, they don't. He tweeted the encouragement for Norwegian voters to support any other party in the election this autumn. Yeah, good luck with that. Another opposing voice came from Rabbi, I won't try to pronounce that, General Director of the European Jewish Association. He wrote a letter to Israeli Prime Minister to call for collaboration between European Jewish organizations and government to prevent the proliferation of anti-Jewish legislation. Good luck with that too. I have no doubt that the state of Israel, the state of the Jewish people, cannot remain indifferent to it, and I call on you to exert all your political influence in order to prevent the exclusion of Jews from life in various European countries, the letter read. I'm going to piss off everyone with this article. At its national conference, the Progress Party also voted against the wearing of hijabs in public schools. The move follows the party's third deputy, Aina Steneshen, calling last September for the ban of full-body swimsuits worn by some Muslim women. FRP's former leader, Carl Hagen, wants to ban municipal employees in Oslo for wearing the hijab and other religious symbols. The party also voted in favor of dual citizenship and is assured of a majority vote in favor of the measure in Parliament. If someone holds dual citizenship and is found to have violated asylum or immigration regulations, the party argued that it would be easier to strip that person of Norwegian citizenship and deport them. Okay, so let's piss off everyone, shall we?
Okay, who haven't pissed off yet?
Yeah. First of all, I will reiterate my long-time commitment to the principle that the Jewish lobby is fucking mental and useless. This is perfect evidence of that. This particular chap, I'm gonna have to try to pronounce his name, Menachem Margolin, I think. The general director of the European Jewish Association. He just made a huge tactical mistake. Writing to Netanyahu, yeah, good luck with that. Netanyahu has been retreating from these kinds of arguments consistently for the last 2 years and a half, because unlike these leaders of NGOs, Jewish NGOs and whatnot, Netanyahu has learned something very important, namely that there is such thing as the interests of Israel, and then there is such thing as the interests of some hardline Jews who can't really understand the current century. And Netanyahu has a mandate to defend the former and not the latter. So I pretty much doubt that Netanyahu will be very happy to alter or ruin his relationship with the NATO founder, that would be Norway, because Rabbi whatever, who's not even living in Norway, is pissed off that a political party says that, yeah, maybe mutilating the genitals of young boys is not particularly a fantastic idea. So yeah, there's that. Also, this wouldn't be, the public in Norway is kind of sick. If, for instance, let's say the cabinet, the Mr. Netanyahu's cabinet issues an official position, the Norwegian public may not be very happy with that, and might actually vote even harsher with the Progressive Party, the Progress Party, than otherwise would have, because the Norwegian public remembers the previous time when the State of Israel tried to use political pressure over an issue that was deemed to negatively affect Jews. I don't know if you remember this particular case. I don't think I ever spoke about it on this show. There was a case in 2013, I think, or 2014, when a guy ordered a custom debit card, bank card. Mm-hmm. And the image that he chose for his custom card was the image with the meme of the happy merchant. Do you know the meme of the happy merchant? I presume you do.
No, I don't think so.
Hold on a second.
Let me Google it.
Happy merchant meme. Yeah, Google happy merchant meme. So the first image that you will see there when you Google happy merchant meme. So yeah, he wanted to use that. Yeah, he wanted to have that particular image on his debit card, which kind of makes sense. You have a place where you have shekels on it. Of course, you're going to have a happy merchant on it. It makes perfect sense. And the embassy of Israel to Norway intervened, trying to drum up media hysteria over, oh my God, such a huge evidence of overt anti-Semitism and whatnot. The bank eventually withdrew that particular card, and the judge of the case was like, really? And you all drummed up an international controversy over all of this? You're all insane. Because the guy was sued over hate symbols and whatnot, and he was acquitted because the judge was a normal human being. And since then, the Norwegian public has become less and less sensitive to this kind of controversies drummed up, and Netanyahu will be smart enough to ignore this particular guy from the European Jewish Association. So that's tactical mistake number one. Tactical mistake number two is this already passé narrative of tying anything that relates to circumcision with anti-Semitism. It may work in Germany, but it no longer works anywhere else. Most people are smart enough to understand that no, they were wanting to preserve the bodily integrity of infant boys has nothing to do with hating Jews. If anything, it has a lot to do with liking Jews. I mean, I would like the next generation of Jew to grow up unmutilated. Thank you. It wouldn't be such a bad idea, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Also, just the idea that that the state of Israel is like the supreme authority on Jews everywhere, and that it just gets the right to decide how any country on earth treats Jews is rather preposterous.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's why. And again, Netanyahu spoke about this at a certain press conference when he was asked about some. It was also a policy on circumcision. I think it was in Denmark. And he says, like, it's not my problem. The individuals there are Danish citizens. They should vote. They should do whatever they want. It's not my problem. You asked me about what I do in Israel. I'm the prime minister of Israel. I'm not the prime minister of Denmark. That's why I don't think.
Prime Minister of Jews.
Mm-mm. Yeah. And besides, my main point is, and again, I see this as, I mean, if there's a secret for anyone, here's the secret unveiled. I'm a Zionist, and we just lost 100 listeners. But no, in all seriousness, these people, like the rabbi whatever from the European Jewish Association, these are the people who actually create more anti-Semitism than it would have otherwise been. This guy or that guy from the coalition of Jewish communities in Scotland who's pushing for a comedian to be jailed because his dog made a Sieg Heil sign. No, I'm not joking. That's a real case in Scotland.
I've seen the video.
Yeah, these kinds of people these people create more anti-Semitism and more anti-Semites than it would have otherwise been. Because you see them pushing for disdainful nonsense like this. And they also project a very false image. I mean, Jews worldwide aren't a monolith. Believe it or not all Jews agree with everything politically. If anything, Jews are the most politically diverse group.
Yeah, I mean, just look at basically any political philosophy, and you will find that Jews are overrepresented in it.
Yeah,
at least amongst leaders and major proponents.
Yeah, I remember when we interviewed the Israeli journalist Yele Ronen on this show. You and I were also hosting the show at that time, and he said that at the end of the show that wherever there's ideology, there's Jewish people. And we were already live for 2 hours and a half, and we didn't pursue that point. But basically, any ideology, not just a particular type of or flavor of ideology, wherever there's ideology, period, any sort of ideology. There is at least one Jew among the founders or among the very influential thinkers and whatnot, and they're usually a lot more than one.
Yeah, and they're overrepresented compared to the general population.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They're overrepresented in conservatism, in liberalism, in progressivism, in communism, in libertarianism, any political philosophy you can think of, aside from maybe National Socialism. Basically, in any of them. Jews are usually vastly overrepresented.
Yeah, and even, well, particularly not in National Socialism, but in fascism more generally, there are also quite a lot of, of Jewish writers. Yeah, so, but what these kinds of individuals are doing, these kinds of agitators, like this guy, rabbi, whatever, they're basically projecting the image that this is not true. They're projecting the image that all Jews think the same and all Jews agreed with the same political talking points and whatnot, which is simply not true. And again, I would remind the older listeners might already know that, but in certain parts of Norway, such as northern Norway, circumcision is already de facto banned because there are no providers, because the doctors refuse to do it. Yet for some reason I haven't read anywhere, and this would have been known by now in the Israeli press if this had happened, of any mass exodus of Jews from northern Norway to somewhere else because of that. So maybe, just maybe, it's really not such a big deal outside of the tiny corners of agitators and lobbyists.
Yeah, it just seems like to most Jews it's just not that big of a deal.
At least not anymore, yeah. As for the rest of it, of course, the Independent covers this issue. Oh my God, the anti-immigrant party. Yeah, well, no, it's not an anti-immigrant party. It's basically it's almost like a political party that I would have built if I were to build political parties. It's a libertarian conservative party. That is to say, look, Norway has limited spots. The entire planet is not invited to live here. There are certain rules to come here, and if you break those rules, you have to go home. Which I think is a very, very sensible position to take.
Yep.
Calling them anti-immigrant, yeah, no. As for banning hijabs in public schools, yeah, well, in public schools, and this here it is understood as taxpayer schools. Unlike England, where public schools can also mean private schools, in Norway, public school means taxpayer-funded school. Yeah, I don't think taxpayer-funded places should be religiously neutral. I don't think that's
Just to
necessarily.
clarify, are they talking about pupils or teachers there?
I think teachers. I'll have to go and read their program, but I think teachers because there has never been in the history of Norway rules for pupils per se. And if there are such rules, it's not the federal government that makes them. It's the school. So yeah. So definitely teachers.
Okay, then I'm fine with that.
Yeah. But I don't know. Still, it is a big step forward because while many have tried to downplay this, but it's not a political party that actually makes policy. I don't know. The minister of the economy is from the Progressive Party in Norway, so if he wants to defund circumcision, he can actually do it today. And it's part of the ruling coalition. To say that it is not a big deal that influences policy would be just wrong.
Yep.
It would be like the Social Democrats in Germany, or the political party with whom Macron will make an alliance to form the government a few months from now in France. It's not a small thing at all.
Yep.
All right, let's go further. Yeah, the next one is about boycott, and this is really annoying. Sorry, coming from the BBC, but it's about the Netherlands. Women's protest hits Dutch website with ad boycott. A Dutch shock blog has been hit by an advertising boycott after a campaign launched by more than 140 women. TV journalists, columnists, politicians, and the leading economists signed an open letter accusing Green Style of denigrating women and online intimidation, as well as racism and homophobia. They accused big brands such as Rabobank and the Efteling theme park, as well as the Dutch Ministry of Defense, of, quote, paying the salaries of the most influential trolls on the internet. Now, several advertisers have responded by pulling their ads, including the brewer Grolsch and furniture store IKEA and the Dutch tax office. Green Style has been shock blogging for 14 years and describes its stance as tendentious, unfounded, and gratuitously offensive. So why call for a boycott now? The row began when columnist Rosanne Herzberger wrote an article critical of the companies that advertised on the site. You can reduce naked women to stage props, she wrote. I find it revolting, but for me, freedom goes quite a long way. The question is which advertisers are making this content possible. When another columnist, Luz Reimer, added her voice to the criticism, Green Style's editor, Bart Nyman, posted a photo of her on the site asking readers, would you do her? That unleashed an army of aggressive, often anonymous trolls. Oh no! Their comments were graphic. They included threats to rape or inflict twisted forms of sexual assault and other violent acts. Most are too grotesque or offensive to publish here. This time the website had crossed the line, the women decided, and the public boycott campaign was launched. Among those signing the open letter were TV host Eva Jainek, ex-Green leader Femke Halsema, author Mirte Hilkens, and economist Helen Meis. They urged advertisers to end their relationship with Green Style as they had a responsibility to customers not to, quote, support a site where the humiliation of women and racism is the norm, not the exception, close quote. They asked them to consider whether appearing in this kind of environment was in line with their values of their companies. Education Minister Jet Bussmaker and several other politicians have backed the women and told Dutch TV they had to take a stand to protect women from being pilloried online. Politicians from the Liberal D66 and Green Left parties raised the issue in the parliament, and now several companies and government ministries have voted with their feet. Rabobank told the BBC it placed adverts where it expected to reach the desired audience and no longer used Green Style's video sharing sister site Dumperk. Green Style is a small but influential blog. It attracts almost 2 million unique visitors a month and has 88,000 followers on Twitter. Critics say it is racist, sexist, unashamed clickbait, and offers a place for pathetic people to vent their frustrations. But its readers argue it is a refreshing and a political correctness-free zone. Its bloggers promote themselves as protectors of free expression and are proud of their position as provocateurs. By way of a disclaimer, it once wrote a relatively tame article about me, referring to me as a page 3 girl, including a holiday snap that has since been removed. Green Style is also part of the Telegraph Media Group, which is one of the largest media organizations in the Netherlands. Green Style has itself has responded with a blog accusing the politicians of trying to censor it. One former editor of the site, Annabel Naninga, said sexism was being used as an excuse to shut it down because it had been a thorn in the eye for 14 years. One TV presenter has condemned the support for the anti-Green Style campaign as terrifying. By naming and shaming advertisers, the columnists were not only jeopardizing the blog's income, but its very existence. I readily remind my profession that moral indignation is always selective, warned Redrick Vilo. Today it was Green Style, he suggested, but tomorrow it would be another, and before you know it, it could be your turn. So, Green Style basically is, think about it as the Onion, but with 20% real content and significantly far more politically offensive than the Onion. That's basically Green Style for you.
Okay, doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, if you can speak Dutch, it's semi-funny, and sometimes, yes, sometimes their jokes are in poor taste, but so what? I mean, isn't making jokes in poor taste still something permissible? I mean, that's what last time I checked, that was still allowed.
Yeah. Now, to be sure, if you're an advertiser, you may not want your content to appear on a site like that, so I can't really blame advertisers if they pull out of that. On the other hand, organizing a boycott is, I think, not really warranted. It should, of course, be legal, but it's sort of morally, it's a bit shady, I would say.
That is to put it mildly. The future of censorship looks really bad because it is no longer well, in Europe it still is, but to a much lesser extent, but still it's not generally the state that tries to censor us. We're doing it ourselves to one another. Basically, this is what's happening. I mean, a bunch of private citizens, yeah, one of them was former or current government worker, but most of the individuals there were private citizens, drumming up moral outrage, essentially, and trying to persuade by intimidation. I mean, it's one thing to go privately to an advertiser and say, look, your ads have been appearing on something that shows the killing of kittens. You might want to take that down. And it's a whole different thing to threaten the advertiser publicly and say, look, if you don't, me and my other 1,000 friends, we're going to drum up support and name and shame you and boycott you into oblivion because you dare to give, I don't know, 50 euros a month or whatever to the website that we hate. Sure, both of them are legal, but they're on entirely different plans, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, there's like two different kinds of, I guess, freedom of speech that we should be concerned about. The first and the most important, most fundamental one is that the government doesn't censor you. There are no legal repercussions for merely expressing opinions. And that should be absolutely protected, in my opinion. But then there's sort of the wider issue of not facing, I guess, excessively harsh penalties for expressing your opinions. Like you should not get fired for expressing controversial opinions. You should not get boycotted for expressing controversial opinions. And that should not be protected in legal terms, but I think it is desirable to have cultural norms against these kind of boycotting that we see it as morally wrong to say go tattle on someone to their employer if they post something on Facebook which offends you or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sadly, the only way I know that this can be done is by employing what Ben Shapiro calls the mutually assured distraction. Uh, that's basically what he did when leftists created Media Matters, which is basically what doing on a daily basis what these women in the Netherlands have done. Basically, try to shame away advertisers from advertising with conservative outlets. He basically created counter organizations who do just that, try to shame away advertisers from advertising with leftist outlets, and the success has started to become noticeable because suddenly Media Matters have backed away from certain campaigns. Suddenly, more wealthy advertisers started using conservative outlets as well, because once you have mutually assured destruction, there is no longer an incentive for a certain political side to try to use this particular weapon against its political opposition. Maybe there are other more peaceful ways to achieve this, but I don't know what those peaceful ways are. I just don't. The only one that I know to actually work is this one: create, basically, give them a taste of their own medicine, and make sure that everyone is aware that there is such thing as mutually assured destruction. You go after one of my guys, I'll go after 10 of yours. Uh, that basically create a deterrence strategy.
Yeah, I don't know about that going after 10 of yours, because that might just lead to total war, so to speak. And that is quite dangerous. I think more of a proportionate response would be probably a safer bet, because that doesn't lead to that kind of escalation.
I don't know. The way I know it is that when you encounter a bully, answering 10 times harsher tends to scare away the bully. Uh, I'm just saying. Um, if you don't have these kinds of deterrence and mutually assured destruction strategies, it seems that nothing can stop them. Because, for instance, this particular TV presenter tries to use reason. Oh, look, there is the moral indignation is always selective, and tomorrow it could be another one, and before you know it, it could be your turn. Yeah, these kinds of arguments have been tried before in other countries where the left has been more progressive, and they didn't work.
Yeah, but what you're talking about in the analogy of the bully is not to beat up the bully 10 times as hard as he beat up you, but rather to go and find 10 of the bully's friends and beat them up. And then the problem is the next day they're probably out looking for revenge on you.
Well, I didn't say it's not a street street thug mentality. I just said it works. Yeah, I don't know, maybe not 10 of them, but this is basically what Ben Shapiro not just suggested, but put in practice, and it worked. I'm not saying it's the only way. That's what I'm saying. If there are more peaceful ways, I would like to know them. But if there aren't, I'll be very happy to participate in the ones that I know that they work, even though they're not peaceful. Well, peaceful, of course, all of them are peaceful. I'm not talking about beating up anyone, but I am talking about using the same tactic against the opposition until they realize that no, you shouldn't be doing that at all. And as long as you will do it, I'll do it too.
Yeah, I'm not against it in principle, but I think we should be very careful to only go after people who have gone after who have basically used the same tactics themselves. So if that for example, Adria Richards of the Donglegate fame, that she got fired after she got two, I think, tech developers fired. That's a perfectly proportionate response. I think that's great that she also got fired. But if you then go and say, look up various, I don't know, co-workers or friends of hers and try to get them fired, then I would be absolutely opposed to that.
Sorry, the reason I'm laughing is that I suddenly I suddenly reminded the show that James and Robert O'Hara did right after the Donglegate scandal. It was full of dongle jokes. When you said Adria Richards, for some reason I just suddenly remembered that one. When James was losing his dongle somewhere beneath the table. But back to the topic. In this particular instance, if I were a green style agitator, I would go after all the 140 women that that initiated this campaign, and I would look up dirt of every single one of them. And some of them are politicians and public speakers and former leaders of political parties. They all have skeletons in their closet. Of course they do. I would dig up the dirt of all the 140 who signed that petition, and then slowly spread around all the dirt that I'm able to find and agitate within their organizations, have them fired, have them harassed, and then keep on asking, do you like it? Let me know when you don't like it anymore, because if that is pulled off successfully, and all the 140 of them have their lives far more miserable after this campaign, then the next campaign will not exist.
Yep.
I mean, I know it, and this is the problem. Those of us in the pro-free speech wider corner, we're not accustomed to go offensive, to go on the offensive in these terms, in these mean and mean-spirited crusades. We just don't do that. Yeah, we mock you on the internet. We tell you you're fat. We tell you you're wrong. We tell you your logic sucks. But that's pretty much the extent to which we go. We don't go after your jobs. We don't go after your careers. We just don't do that. Maybe we should. In some cases, maybe we should. Yes, it's mean, but sometimes meanness is a good way to survive. I mean, what do they got to lose? They already lost quite a lot of money because of this, so they might as well go down kicking and screaming.
Yeah, and you should never underestimate the importance of revenge. That there's in our culture, there's all these stories about revenge going horribly wrong, and the idea that revenge is never the answer.
Yeah, no.
The thing is that revenge works quite well as a commitment strategy. That if people know in advance that you will avenge yourself if you are wronged, then people will be very, very reluctant to wrong you.
Yeah. For instance, in my culture, it's usually said that revenge is the fool's weapon. But my father used to complete that and says, "Yeah, but you're a much bigger fool if you don't. If you don't seek revenge." So yeah, revenge may be the fool's weapon, but you're a much bigger fool if you don't.
It's basically an intertemporal problem that in the moment when you've already been wronged, taking revenge is actually bad for you. It's in some sort of narrow way irrational, but being known as the kind of person who will take revenge if he's wronged is good for you, because it's a commitment strategy. It means that others will not want to mess with you.
Yeah, basically. All right, let's go to the last one, where we also know that something else is the fault of men these days.
Okay, this one is from pinknews.co.uk. Homosexual behavior in women only developed because of men. Controversial new scientific study claims. Same-sex attraction in women developed because men get turned on by it, a controversial new scientific study has argued. The paper tried to determine the evolutionary origins of lesbianism, arguing that it may have developed because of men's excitement at the thought of women being attracted to one another. The Cypriot researchers from the University of Nicosia surveyed a total of 1,509 heterosexual participants for their study. Lead researcher Menelaus Apostolous' hypothesis has naturally attracted plenty of skepticism, with many arguing that the theories are outlandish and not supported by the evidence gathered, but he defended his theories in conversation with Pink News. Quote, "My argument in the paper is this. A considerable portion of men desire same-sex attractions in women, and this is one possible reason why many women have such attractions," he said. The paper states, "About half of the men in the sample reported that they would become sexually excited if their opposite-sex partners revealed to them that they experienced same-sex attraction. Findings showed that 34.3% of male respondents would prefer a partner who is attracted, quote, predominantly to members of the opposite sex, but occasionally of the same sex. The same answer was given by only 7.8% of women considered in the survey. The researchers argue that one of the reasons for men being attracted to women who experience same-sex attraction could be to increase their certainty of being the father of a potential child if the partner sleeps with someone else. The paper reads, a woman driven by sexual desires may seek sexual contact outside of a long-term intimate relationship. When this woman has sex with another woman, she doesn't have sex with another man, which translates into same-sex contact, reducing the risk of cuckoldry. The study also tried to analyze the differences between long and short-term relationships. In short-term relationships, about 30% of heterosexual men said they would occasionally want their partner to have sexual contact with members of the same sex. This number halved for men in long-term liaisons. The research naturally sparked controversy among the scientific community, but Apostolo insisted to Pink News that this is a solid argument. Diana Fleischmann, a psychologist at the University of Portsmouth, told International Business Times, the paper totally ignores a lot of other possible hypotheses and makes claims that are really not supported by the evidence they provide. For example, the paper failed to account for the effects of porn on the male perception of lesbianism. Quote, I can't really see how cultural factors would make some men be turned on when their partners tell them I want to have sex with another woman, Apostolo said. These kinds of sexual traits are more instinctive. It's a mechanism that has been selected to serve a purpose, to make you reproduce. Apostolo did recognize some of the limitations of his argument and accepted that more research needs to be carried out if we are to understand the complexity of same-sex attractions. He told Pink News, I believe also there are additional factors that need to be taken into consideration if same-sex attraction in women is to be understood. The publication of my theory gives the opportunity for a fruitful academic dialogue where another scholar may attempt to refute, alter, or expand it and replicate my findings.
I'm sorry, I can't take this seriously. I try to include it, and I include it in my upcoming episode on periodic insanity on my channel, but still, I still can't take it seriously. And that's because, have you actually met lesbians? I mean, lesbians are the most miserable people you could ever meet. They're always at war with someone or with something or with the entire world most of the time. I mean, if lesbians are a result of evolution of male preferences imposing an evolutionary pressure upon a certain section of women over time, then how come lesbians have evolved to be that mean and nasty and mean-spirited? I mean, it just doesn't compute.
Actually, I'm inclined to take this sort of argument seriously.
Okay.
I mean, if lesbians are as mean-spirited as you say, that does not necessarily go against this argument, because as far as I understand it, his argument is basically that that being bisexual confers some sort of reproductive advantage on women because they're more likely to be selected by men. Under this theory, then lesbianism is sort of a sort of unwanted, or like a risk of this whole process, that there's some sort of range of genes that make you more attracted to women, and in most women, this has sort of the this has the wanted effect of making them somewhat attracted to women, but still also attracted to men. But in some cases, it goes a bit too far. You get a bit too many of these genes, and then you're only attracted to women. And so it's basically something like the argument, like the evolutionary argument for this sickle cell gene, where having one gene doesn't give you the disease, but makes you resistant to malaria. But if you have sickle cell gene on both pairs of the chromosome, then you have a very serious disease that's even worse than malaria, and then you're in a really bad shape. So this would be sort of an analogous argument here.
I fully understood your argument. I hope everyone else did. Although I'm pretty sure that at least one person will think that you just said that lesbianism is a disease. Although I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that either. But in all seriousness, the reason I'm not taking this seriously is because being mean-spirited doesn't necessarily mean that it's counterproductive, but also lesbians don't seem to be very attractive human beings overall, not just physically, but also as a personality. And this has been pretty much consistent over very long periods of time. I mean, there are writings about lesbians that go back 300-400 years in time, and not many things seem to have changed when it comes to the personality of lesbians. So that's why I'm not taking this seriously. I mean, if lesbian attraction is the way Professor Apostolou says, then it wouldn't have that inherently mean that they would at least be more attractive people in general for men. I mean, it would just seem like a foregone conclusion to me. So something seems to be missing from this rationale.
I mean, his theory predicts that that bisexual women are more attractive to men. Basically, from an evolutionary point of view, it really doesn't matter how attractive lesbians are to men, because they're basically not going to reproduce. If they're like purely lesbian. So that the whole thing is that the whole issue of homosexuality is quite hard to explain from an evolutionary point of view. It's both male and female homosexuality. It's really quite a mystery. There's various different theories on how to account for that, but none of them, as far as I'm concerned, is like entirely satisfactory.
Here's something that NetGod put it in the chat room. Women seem to have evolved to not have firm opinions on anything, including their own sexual preferences, maybe because of the need to switch families at adolescence and adapt. Okay.
Yeah, there's probably a lot to that.
Then also a few lines lower, NetGod puts in a lesbian could be just a side effect of that, plus the fact that Hollywood made it cool, so there is a herd following effect. Yeah, the herd following effect is very interesting to watch in itself. Of course, lesbians have existed since forever. As I said, there are writings talking about the personality of lesbians and whatnot, going back hundreds and hundreds of years back in time. So it's not like lesbianism is something invented by by Hollywood yesterday. But the professor in England quoted in this particular article, and NetGod in the chat room, they do have a point where they say that culture might have something to do with it. At least when analyzing, the last 40-50 years, because we can definitely say that bisexuality and lesbianism are definitely far more, not necessarily cool, but definitely far more acceptable in the current year than they were in 1817, for instance.
Yeah. The question, of course, is then if it's actually gotten more frequent, or if people are just more open about it, and that that, for example, it's quite plausible that, say, 100 years ago, almost all gay people were just repressed, and they just did not, maybe not even admit it to themselves, and certainly not to others. And back then, quite possibly most homosexuals just married a partner of the opposite sex, and were just indistinguishable from heterosexual people to an outside observer.
Yeah, I don't think there is any accurate way to measure that. I mean, I don't think there is a way to answer to that question. It could be a way to answer that question maybe sometimes in the future. I don't know, comparing the width of how wide the phenomenon was, let's say in 1990, versus how wide will it be in 2040 or 2030, because it would look at things within a long enough period of time that was also not 18th century like.
Yeah, basically, like if you just look at the time period after which homosexuality became more or less acceptable, and then we can look at how has the frequency of that changed over time, and that changes then presumably due to culture. That's like a reasonable methodology, but just we can't really carry that out yet, because homosexuality has only become more or less accepted in like a couple of countries very recently. So it's hard to make that test yet, but maybe 30, 40 years down the line we can do that. One thing I wanted to point out is one thing that this hypothesis has going for it, this hypothesis of this paper, is that pure homosexuality is a lot more frequent in men than it is in women. Whereas in women, bisexuality is more frequent than in men. So that would be something that this theory would predict. So that's one piece of evidence in favor of it, which is quite interesting.
Although, again, and that's going to be very hard to measure, and I don't think there is a way to accurately measure, or at least to reasonably accurately assess how influential culture is in this department. Because as Netgod says in the chat room very well, we have to remember men have often been viscerally repulsed to male homosexuality, a lot more than to female homosexuality. And he gives the example, for instance, the Bible calls it an abomination, whereas the exact same men that wrote the Bible gave women a pass. There's very little about female sexuality in the Bible, or in general in dogmatic literature of those times.
Yeah, there's also like a good biological explanation for that, why homosexuality is often considered disgusting or an abomination, because anal sex is very likely to, or much more likely to spread diseases than is heterosexual sex, and lesbian sex is least likely to spread STDs. So I mean, the whole reason we feel disgust is because we feel disgusted by things that are likely to make us sick. So we feel disgusted by other people's bodily fluids because they carry all sorts of germs. Of course, we didn't know about the germs, a million years ago. But still, people who felt disgust and therefore avoided other people's feces, for example, were more likely to reproduce, and that's why we've inherited this disgust reaction. And this disgust reaction also explains why people feel disgusted by buggery, and there's no sort of equivalent there in sex between women.
Yeah, that's a reasonable explanation. I have to admit that I'm not entirely up to date with these things. Dennis Prager of the Prager University mentioned in an interview where he was saying that he first believed that the Bible's rantings against homosexuality were just reinforcing the already pre-existent anti-gay bias, but then he said that he changed his mind on that and rather considered that bisexuality was much more normative in pre-Torah, pre-biblical times, and basically the Torah introduced a much more normative sexuality. And he said that he saw convincing research on that in that department. I didn't have the time to actually look at what he already said what he actually read, so I didn't have time to look at at the research that convinced Danish Prager that wasn't the case. But it just seems unlikely to me that there was a time that when bisexuality was at the very least more widespread than now. I just don't think so. Your explanation strikes me as much more much sounder than that.
Yeah, and when you're talking about ancient people, I'm not really sure if the using the term homosexuality and heterosexuality and so on is actually appropriate, because a lot of the times these people did not really think of the sexuality as being like part of your identity. It's just regardless, they didn't really think you had something like that. It's more like you can just be attracted to a man and you can have sex with a man, or you can have sex with a woman. Doesn't mean that that you have some sort of innate sexual identity. That's it's also important to make a differentiation. A lot of times you hear that such and such country, in such and such country, homosexuality is a crime. I don't know any country where that's the case. What is actually a crime in those countries is for a man to have sex with another man. That's a different thing than being homosexual. You can be homosexual and just not have sex with another man. That's perfectly legal in, say, Saudi Arabia, for example. Yeah, another point is that I do think there's a lot of cultural influence there. Like if you look at ancient Greece, for example, where pederasty was quite widespread. But even there, you have to sort of you have to be careful that most of the time pederasty did not actually mean penetrative anal sex. What the practice they usually engaged in, that I don't know, it has some sort of fancy Latin name, but basically it's the man would thrust between the boy's thighs, which was close together and oiled, and create friction that way, and thereby arouse himself. But it was not usually anal penetration that was practiced in ancient Greece.
Yeah, it was more of a sorry.
And that sexual practice is not likely to spread any sort of diseases.
Yeah, it was more of an erotization of I guess a teenage boy's body rather than what we would think about it today.
Yeah.
All right. You definitely took this a lot more seriously than I did. in the video that I videotaped 2 days ago and it's going to be published tomorrow, I mocked it a lot more than that. I guess it was a way for the University of Nicosia to put itself on the map and and people to get on talking about. I mean, you're a small university in Cyprus. Very hard to be noticed. You're that little island beneath Turkey. It's very hard to be noticed. But publish something like this, get the pink news outraged. At least people will talk about you.
Yeah. That being said, it's like an interesting argument, and it's like it's not absurd, but doesn't mean that it's true. And I mean, even this researcher himself doesn't say that this is the truth, I've solved homosexuality. It's just he just says that this might be an important contributing factor, which it well might be. Who knows?
Yeah, he maintains a bit of skepticism even to his own argument. So at the very least, he acts in a scholarly manner. at least up to a point.
Yep.
Right. Well, with that said, I'm kind of out of things to say, other than that I'll definitely be here on June the 2nd. And I don't know, prepare everyone for the fact that I'm going to broadcast from Stockholm in 2 weeks.
All right. Then we will see you in a week from now. In the meantime, I would invite you to check out my blog, which is at orthogonalideas.com. And until then, take the red pill.
Take the red pill. Goodbye, everyone.